automatically refuses things that aren't quite right. Thank you. So in terms of, we have a consultation process. The council has a statement of community involvement, which is on the policy pages of the website, approved a couple of years ago. That does two things effectively. It sets out the how residents get involved in the plan making process, but also how they get involved in the decision making process as well. So the requirements that we have are in line with national regulations. There's normally a 21-day period for response. We can't make a decision within that period, but we can after. Notwithstanding that, we do allow and accept and consider any representations that are made up until the day of determination. So when you're getting asked how people can respond, our preferred method is via the Breckland website, but email and post is accepted. Comments must be restricted to material planning considerations, and that again is probably a workshop on its own as to what is and isn't a material planning consideration. But if somebody wants to object on the grounds of loss of a view or reduction in the value of their property, that's not something that we can have regard to. Thank you, Ruth. So just very briefly, just a quick look at the table that indicates how we consult. So there are various options: advertising an application, putting a site notice up, letters to neighbours, and that sets out when we do that. Where there is an either or, we tend to be a bit belt and braces. We would rather over-consult than under-consult. And one of the issues we do have is occasionally we will get people say they weren't notified, where we can demonstrate a letter was produced. We can't demonstrate that the Royal Mail took it and delivered it. So occasionally that is a challenge for us, and it's something that we're constantly looking to see how we can try and get a little bit more certainty in that. But I think it's always going to be a bit of an issue. Thank you, Ruth. So building control, and I suspect not many of you will have much contact with building control. It has a manager who reports directly to myself, and we are currently fully staffed at the moment. We have a full-time manager, full-time principal, and 2 part-time senior building control officers who are supported by 2 full-time technical support officers. Building control is not without its challenges. Most of you will probably be aware that it operates in a commercial environment against approved inspectors who can offer the same service but not within the umbrella of local authority building control, which is what we operate within. We maintain around about 65% market share, which is actually quite good. I think the challenge for us is that a lot of that is smaller work, and the challenge that we have and the work we're doing in terms of business marketing and business planning is to try and build up the portfolio of larger sites and work that will bring in additional fees. You will all be aware of the Grenfell tragedy several years ago, and what came out of that was a public inquiry and many recommendations to reform the way that building control works. That includes the compulsory accreditation of all BCOs, building control officers, involving some retraining and examinations to allow them to continue working. That accreditation has to be done by the 6th of July this year. We're in a good position. Our manager has passed his exams with distinction, and even if our other officers aren't accredited in time, he can sign off work on that basis. However, the principal has taken his examination and we're awaiting his results. As you can imagine, the process is slow, and because there are a lot of building control officers seeking to get registered now. The other 2 are sitting their exams in early June. I have to say that it's a very stressful time for building control officers. A lot are leaving the profession. And that's understandable. If you've been doing a job for 30 years and you're suddenly asked to demonstrate that you know how to do it, it can sometimes irritate people. But I can understand exactly why the work has been done. Thank you, Ruth. So in terms of building control performance, again, you can see that the volumes have dropped off over the last few years, very similar to matters that control DM volumes, around nutrient neutrality, around the economic downturn. We're still maintaining a good share of the market. The market is much smaller at the moment than historically it has been, but we are proactive in terms of developing a business plan, looking at how we set fees as well once we get back in-house, and making sure that we maintain regular contact with developers, agents and architects. So thank you, Ruth. So just very quickly in terms of performance, again, you can see the black line is the target, and we operate very well against those targets, and those targets are extremely challenging. In terms of site inspections, we still try and offer a same-day inspection. If you contact us before 10 a.m. in the morning, we will try and get there on the same day. It's not a guarantee, but we're seeking to try and do that. Thank you, Ruth. So just very briefly on neighbourhood planning. Historically, the Council has provided grant funding to support groups in providing new plans and renewing existing plans. Grants in 2023-24 went to Spall and Palgrave, to Mattershall for a review, and to Yaxham for a review. A made neighbourhood plan has the same weight in decision making as a local plan. It's part of what's generically termed the development plan for an area. So they're seen as being a key tool for communities to seek to support and control development in their area. I know that there are people over there who have been involved in neighbourhood plans, and you'll know that it requires a lot of commitment, a lot of resource, and it's not something to be taken on lightly. But the feedback we always get is that once the plan is made and you get out the other end, it's worth the journey. So currently we have 9 plans made. They're listed there from Attleborough down to Yaxham, and Necton is the most recent that has just come out of examination and will be going now to referendum. Unfortunately, somebody called an election, so it's now going to go to referendum after the 4th of July. So I mentioned nutrient neutrality earlier, and given that that is one of the biggest issues within the, sorry Ruth, I forgot to say again, and again, sorry, still early. So nutrient neutrality is still the major challenge within the district and within the county as a whole. Introduced in March 2022 without warning, basically it prevents approval of any application that involves overnight stays unless it can mitigate against that development's impact on river pollution in the Wensum and Yare catchments. You'll be aware that ourselves, together with North Norfolk, Broadland and South Norfolk, are part of the Norfolk Environmental Credits joint venture to broker nutrient neutrality credits. That's quite a groundbreaking venture, and certainly we're getting a lot of interest from other parts of the country who are seeking to replicate what we've done in Norfolk and have driven forward. Working together, we've succeeded in obtaining 9.6 million in capital funding to deliver schemes to address the issue. And that money, whilst it sits with Broadland, it's managed by all the authorities that are affected by nutrient neutrality, and bidding on that opened on the 16th of May. We as a council are working with a number of landowners to deliver schemes through Section 106 agreements. So we're working with Persimmon in Geist, and we're working with landowner in Shipton, but we're also working with Wendley and Beck as well, and they will be bidding for money to benefit both catchments, as well as doing feasibility on our own land, and we're looking to have that work with us in the next week or so. We're also working with developers to enable them to unlock other funding streams to help unlock their sites, because whilst credits may well come available, viability, certainly for bigger sites, can be a major issue here, and it's important that developers, where there is a genuine funding gap, are able to try and access other ways to fit that gap. Thanks, Ruth. So we touched on the impact of nutrient neutrality, and currently we have around 900 residential units on hold and around 400 affordable units. There are several small builders out there that we're aware of that no longer have a pipeline of work, which has implications not only for them but for tradesmen within the area as well. The technical elements of nutrient neutrality, understanding the calculator, understanding the reports, and the uncertainty for applicants and officers have put the whole system under extreme pressure. To be fair to planning agents and to developers, they realise that this isn't a problem of Breckland and Norfolk's own doing, and they are extremely patient. But again, officers are wanting to try and get applications out the door and aren't able to do so at the moment, then that has its own pressures. Myself, the head of development management, and Rachel in policy, we spend at least 1 to 2 days a week over the last 2 years to address this. I know that other assistant directors have also been heavily involved in this as well, but a special mention to Rachel Gibbs in the policy team, who I say worked tirelessly, has I think slept and ate and breathed this for the last 2 years to try and move this forward with the authorities and partners such as Wendley and Beck Environmental Project. Thank you, Ruth. So in terms of progress, NEC's delivering credits to developments within the Yare catchment. Whilst that has minimal impact on us because we don't have many within the Yare catchment, one of our schemes has received credits, so we are starting to slowly see the benefits of that. We've also granted planning permission for some schemes where they're able to mitigate their own impact, and that's a genuine progress over the last 18 months. NEC has entered into an agreement to replace septic tanks with packaged treatment plants, and each of those will mitigate 8 to 10 houses and provide benefits against all the catchments within Norfolk. So we will see the benefits of that, and I know that there are other bodies out there that are looking to do similar as well. We're working, as I said, with 2 landowners to agree legal terms which will potentially bring forward schemes for both the catchments. Thank you, Ruth. Just very quickly, bringing the service in-house. You'll all be aware that, as a whole, the service transfers over to Breckland on the 1st of July. There's 52 staff being brought over on 2P contracts, and Capita and Breckland have been working together over the last 12 months to make this as smooth as possible. The consultation period started on the 15th of April and ends tomorrow. We've had a couple of representatives from the service taking part in those consultation meetings with Breckland, with Capita, and also with the Unison as well. Staff are understandably anxious, but I think the mood is generally positive, and issues that have been outlined are getting resolved and getting resolved quite speedily. So I think generally we're in a good place. As it says at the bottom, Breckland, I know, are committed to making the transfer as smooth as possible. Capita are as well, and looking forward to welcoming the whole team into #Team Breckland, as it says there. Getting corporate already. So, in terms of planning reform, I've chosen not to do much on this really because it's certain to be a key topic as part of the election debate. And what I don't want to do is start talking about things that may change over the next 6 months, depending on how the election goes. So what I would suggest is that maybe at some stage in the future we come and do a separate thing on planning reform and how we're gearing up to deal with it when there's a little bit more certainty about what may or may not happen over the next sort of 6 to 12 months. So in terms of highlights, so Ruth, delivered around 2,000 houses between 2021 and 2023. And when we're looking at an annual target of about 649, you can see that we're well on track to deliver that. We've delivered neighbourhood plans within that time period for New Buckingham, Necton and Watton. We've produced the Breckland Design Guide, which will form part of the local plan, and that will guide development within the district, ensuring that Breckland residents have the level of design that they deserve. Norfolk is a very distinctive county. Breckland has its own character within that, and we need to make sure that we're not getting off the peg designs for houses. And it's been difficult to have the tools to enable us to do that. We now have them, we're now using them, and we've had one appeal hearing very recently. We're awaiting the result, where the Breckland Design Guide was used as part of the evidence base to support the council's view that the design was not appropriate in terms of that application. So we will see what happens on that. We have conservation area appraisals adopted for both Swaffham and Thetford. That work was done by both the economic regeneration team and also in partnership with the town councils, and also as part of the planning service as well. We've got work commenced on the urban extension. I think we're around 500 or 600 houses underway there. 3 phases with 3 different developers building out. We're dealing with the first set of applications for the Attleborough urban extension, including a pumping station, and we're confident that we will see spades in the ground round about the end of this year, beginning of next, if not sooner. Thanks, Ruth. So over £2.8 million worth of Section 106 money is allocated to various projects, from affordable housing, including things like Elm House within Thetford, to supporting village halls, providing open space, provided 284 affordable units. We've successfully reviewed the local plan to enable us to maintain our 5-year housing land supply and take away the need for a partial review. We've commenced the local plan update, had 2 successful community engagement exercises, and the latest will start on the 3rd of June on Monday. And finally, we have an excellent appeals record. In terms of major applications, between 2022 and 2024, we had 6 appeals, of which 5 were dismissed. And over the same time period, in relation to minor applications, we had 55 appeals, of which 44 were dismissed. And that is an exceptional record, not only locally, but nationally as well. And I think that's tribute to the quality of the decision making, but also to the fact that we do have local plans and neighbourhood plans in place which seek to guide development within the district. Thank you, Ruth. So, any questions? Apologise for the length of that, but there's a lot to get through.
No, please don't apologise. I think actually that was incredibly useful. I certainly found it useful, and it occurs to me as I was sitting here listening, I think this is a really good example of a service that touches every single ward, every single councillor. So actually it's really important. And I'd like to think, given the 1st of July date, that we planned it this way, but we didn't. But actually it's quite timely that you're here today, I think. So thank you very much. I'm going to open the floor to questions, please. Robert Kybird, please.
Thank you, Chairman. 2 questions, Simon. Could you explain a little bit more about the category no prior approval? It seems to be an attempt to short-circuit the planning process. And I think in terms of detailed delivery, the provision of streetlights seems to sort of fallen by the wayside between towns, districts, county and developers. And it's of concern to new residents to the district, and I'm not quite sure how we can deal with it in the future.
Thank you. No prior approval. So prior approval is where permitted development rights exist for a form of development, such as conversion of a building to residential. But as part of that, you have to submit details to essentially say, this is what we're looking to do. It meets the criteria, therefore I don't need planning permission. And that, we basically have no choice. If it meets the criteria, we say, yeah, it does. So you've got prior approval and you can go ahead and do your development. It's one of the major changes over the last few years in terms of permitted development is the ability to effectively change buildings as commercial uses and agricultural buildings to residential without going through a formal process. So it's a determination, basically, councillor, that it either accords with the criteria or it doesn't accord with the criteria. In terms of street lighting is primarily a county function, as I'm sure you're aware. I know that districts and parish and town councils have the ability to have street lighting, but it's very often something that's determined by the county council. They have strict policies in terms of when street lighting is appropriate, based both on sustainability and green energy arguments, as well as safety arguments and cost arguments as well. They're totally open about that. It's really down to other authorities as to whether or not they want to provide street lighting and how they fund that street lighting within their area. It's not something really that we can get overly involved with. I'm also very conscious that a lot of areas within Breckland, within Norfolk, have dark sky policies as well. So there's always trying to get that balance right between people being comfortable where they live and the desire to be in a rural area. I have to say, when I moved down from Stoke-on-Trent and moved into a Norfolk village, I just didn't have enough torches with me. just amazed me.
So my thoughts were actually geared towards Kingsfleet, which looks like we're going to have 5,000 houses with about 50 streetlights.
I think essentially that will be a decision made by the developer in discussion with the County Highway Authority as to where it is appropriate to put street lighting on, and I suspect it will be along the main junctions and the main pedestrian routes. I don't know what their approach is off the top of my head, but I'm more than happy to pick it up with them and see how they're looking to deal with that on a phase-by-phase basis.
Lovely. Thank you very much. I've got David next, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Simon. Very good presentation. And I think most of my fellow councillors will agree that, well, from an emotive point of view, most of the comments we get from our local residents are planning related in some shape, way or form. So I'm not going to ask you about a specific one, but just a general comment. You and I have exchanged emails in the past with regards to the benefits of 106 against SIL. Is that conversation still going on in the planning department in terms of the possibility of moving to SIL from 106, or is it now a dead issue? Are we staying with 106? Thank you.
I know that the council before my time looked at SIL and decided against it for various reasons. I think that there were issues around whether or not enough money could be generated in terms of uplift in value around SIL, but also the fact that a big chunk of the district's housing would be within the two main urban extensions at Attleborough and Thetford, and those would be self-contained in terms of what they would deliver, and that would be best achieved through the Section 106 process. There's no plans to investigate SIL. It's a complex process. We also have the infrastructure levy hovering above us, so I think until we know exactly what is happening with that, I see little point in revisiting SIL at this moment in time.
Okay, thank you. Harry next, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Simon, for the comprehensive presentation and also Councillor Suckett, for the introduction. I've got a couple of sort of observation, comments and a question. First observation is, I think you talked about the challenges in terms, one of them was around consultees. Speaking as a planning committee member, it's quite clear, I think, that pressures in terms of resources for some of the statutory consultees are apparent, where we have either late comments back from them, or we particularly get things like no objections subject to conditions, and you've got a long list of conditions to read through and tie up with the report, or there is no comment at all. That's one observation. The other one, which is a positive one, which was having been on the committee now in my 10th year of service, which is I really enjoy doing, is the design guide, which I know, having sat on modules where we looked at what North Norfolk have been doing, so I hope that bears some fruit and helps the process of some applications. But my third question relates to your comments around you over consult rather than under consult. And whilst I'm sure we will appreciate, all members appreciate the difficulties in terms of consulting, the language that we have to use, we've got the statutory timetables, is how far you can keep under review any additional requirements that you want to keep in place for or develop with ward members around not just where you consult but how you consult. So not necessarily just large applications, but are you reaching all the residents in that particular area? What type of consultation is it? Is it email? Is it web? Yes, there's a public notice up. How far you're doing local meetings, thinking about people who are actually working and so forth. That's not to take away what you have done, particularly with filigree communications and doing stuff around the market towns, but I just sense there could be more to do on that, working with members. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, in relation to the last point, I think you're right. We always need to be reviewing how we consult and how we engage. I think it is one of those things where there will be a perception that we're never quite doing enough. And it's balancing up the costs against the benefits. So in terms of planning applications, we send out thousands and thousands of letters every year, which is it's not a cheap process, and we try and do it as effectively as possible. We try to minimise when we reconsult, but residents, and I think quite rightly, have an expectation that they know what's going on. I would also emphasise the role of parish and town councils, because parish and town councils are made aware of every application within their area, and they're perfectly at liberty where they think it's appropriate to do so to go and seek and consult with residents as well. So there's a role for everybody there. We review it probably on an annual basis, but as I say, we try and do over the bare minimum to try and reach as many people as we can. So, for example, on the Abbey application, we sent out well over 1,100 letters in relation to that, and that's quite an expensive process.
Okay, thank you very much. Fabian, next, please.
Thank you, Simon, for the report. It's very useful. You made one comment regarding staffing, and I could interpret it both ways, and obviously positive. It's just about the staff and how they would perhaps progress to other districts or other areas to progress their career. If I'm going to be really negative, does this mean that we've got a problem recruitment into Breckland? Or going into a more positive bit, obviously there is this constant interchange of people, and we've got people coming into Breckland to work in our planning department, and those obviously leaving, because obviously being a district, and a very important district but quite small, there is a limitation to how you can, if you are ambitious, to progress.
I think it's a really interesting point, and I think it's fair to say that the team that we have across all elements of planning and building control, like working at Breckland, and I say Breckland even though they're capital employees at the moment, they like working within the service area, and we try and make sure that we give them a good working environment, and that we keep the interest up, and that we train them. What is very difficult is to be able to guarantee that career progression. And when you're in a relatively small labour pool as you are within East Anglia, within Norfolk and Suffolk, you do tend to get a merry-go-round of people moving from one authority to another. And certainly one of the discussions, I may get kicked from both sides of the table here, but one of the discussions that we need to have when we come over on the 1st of July is how we look at that resourcing, because I know Breckland has a good track record of bringing people in through its HR policies, and we'll need to be able to take advantage of that and look at how we can recruit to the vacancies that we've got at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Terry Lands, please.
Thank you, Chair. With your indulgence, I'll ask a couple of questions. This is a bit of a good news, bad news one. Firstly, the good news. I think you're a bit modest, actually. As far as I can recall, you didn't mention the work you've done in training. And as part of Thetford Town Council, we were all very pleased that you and Becky came down and on 2 occasions and gave us some really high quality insight into the world of planning. And I'm very grateful for that personally, and I'm sure the Town Council would echo that. Also grateful for the role that you and Becky have played in coming and meeting with the residents of the Abbey estate, and I think that was really welcome and was good news for everybody. However, the appointed officer for the Abbey redevelopment wasn't available soon after the outline planning application went in. The atmosphere on the estate among residents is, it's fair to say, fairly febrile. And they were then informed that the officer was on annual leave the week after. So we were a little bit concerned about that. They were very cognizant of a 21-day period for lodging objections. And I wonder if you might comment on that, please. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. They're appreciated, and I have to say we enjoyed it. Yeah, and I think there's a lot of benefit to ourselves, and we want to get other officers involved over time, coming out, meeting with parishes and town councils and making that connection. And it's always good when you can see the whites of people's eyes, isn't it, and have those frank discussions. That they work both ways. In terms of the Abbey, as you'll know, it took us a while to validate it. It's an extremely complicated application with a lot of documents, and we've not really started working our way in any detail through those documents. That process is starting now. The application will be led by Becky as Head of Development Management, and she will have support that is being funded by the applicant through a planning performance agreement, which is a perfectly normal way to do these things, and enables us to have that resource in place to deal with this complex application. We've committed, both of us, to come and speak to Abbey residents once we know exactly what the application is about and proposing. And that would be on the basis of coming and saying, this is what the application is, this is what the process is, and these are the next steps. We're nowhere near a view yet as to the merits or dismerits of that application and what's involved in it. In terms of the 21 days, as I said earlier, the 21 days is the statutory time frame for which, before which a decision can be made. You can absolutely rest assured that no decision will be made on the Abbey within 22 days. In fact, I think we've probably gone beyond that now. And I am totally comfortable with the message going back that we will be having that session. Not sure yet. We need to get it worked out and take a view as to whether we do it pre or post-election. That might be something that we have to discuss internally. But certainly, if people want to wait for that session and then make representations on the back of it, that won't be an issue. We have the application-specific web page on the Breckland website as well, and we will be updating that as to timelines, revisions, committee dates, things of that nature, and encourage people to use that, but not to get hung up about the 21-day period. This application won't be going to committee for at least 6 months and possibly longer.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. That's really useful, and I will take that on and communicate it to the residents. The volume of paperwork involved in that application is huge, and I think we're all a bit intimidated by it, weren't we? Yeah. Thanks, Simon.
It was always going to be a complicated application, which is why we need that external resource who can devote a few days a week to doing nothing else. So we've got a good officer involved who, whilst they're working remote, Becky is on the ground, I'm on the ground, and we'll be facing up and fronting up this application between us.
Okay, I've got one more speaker listed, which is Roger. Is there anyone who hasn't spoken so far that wants to ask a question? William. So we'll take Roger first and then move on to William.
Thank you, Chairman. A couple of things. Just coming back to what Councillor Kybird mentioned about streetlights, I think it might be really useful for parish and towns if you could just send out a short one-page briefing note to all parish and town councils about what they can do if they want streetlights in there with for a particular application, that they can speak to the county council through section, I think it's section 278 and section 38 agreements. We've certainly done it in my parish. You learn as you go along with planning. So the latest application, we managed to, with the help of the county council, put in a bid to the developer, fully costed on the maintenance cost and the running cost of those streetlights, I think for 10 or 15 years. The parish is always the street lighting authority in Swanton. We own all the LED street lights. So they have to conform to our specification for the lights. But now the money's come through. I think the latest development, I think we've got something like 20 street lights and we're getting about 15 grand for future maintenance, so the parish is not burdened with that. I think it might be useful because I don't think parish and towns always appreciate that there are these legal agreements that probably with the county council sit with them and the developer, but the towns and parishes can get involved as well if they want that. And I'm happy to help any parishes if they want to put the formulas together. The other thing I just want to ask Simon is about the Ocella system. Now, I like Ocella. I think that's a really good system. I think it's user-friendly. I get lots of comments at parish level and residents who say they like it. I'm concerned that we're going to be looked to change to something, is it iDocs? But I'm concerned that the iDoc system isn't going to be as user-friendly or as robust as the Ocella system. I'm just wondering, is there any merit in us actually developing the Ocella system? I think is it one or two people who developed that originally and there's not the technical support, but is that something that, are we really comfortable with iDocs? Do we really think that'll do the job for us and the residents and be robust enough? Can you sort of tell us where we are with that and the changeover, please?
Just very quickly on your first point, I'll liaise with colleagues in county street lighting and see if there's anything they have that can help in terms of advice to parish and town councils and see what we can do in relation to that. In terms of iDocs and Ocella, as I'm sure you're aware, Ocella's been with the council, I think about 30 years, something like that. And over time, it's been developed to do how we want it to do it, and it's been fairly heavily tailored and to our particular needs. I think what I would say is that iDocs is used by probably about 65–70% of authorities in the country in terms of planning back office systems, and I'm hoping that it will be as good as, if not better than, the system we have at the moment. We're committed into delivering the iDoc system, and we have a timetable that will ensure that delivery over the next 6 months. The Ocella system, you're quite right, the person who developed that is retiring now. There is no security support for it, and it has security risks associated with it, and that's the main reason why we had to take the decision to move across. So, as with any change of back office system, there will be minuses, there will be pluses, and we will make sure that we work with parish and town councils once it's up and running to try and ensure that it's a good service for them as well.
Thank you. And last speaker, William, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. One comment. I'm looking forward to the team coming back on the 1st of July. But I noticed in your report, Simon, you talked about the staff perception or some of the staff perceptions and the pressures they're under. And I guess my comment is I just hope that when the staff are back with us, we can come up with a way where we can offer them that flexibility, that support, that one-team approach, which actually encourages them to be able to work in maybe different ways to other authorities in Norfolk, to give them hope, support, so that they do stay with Breckland, because we offer something different, not just in the planning regs, but in the way we treat our staff. So that's that first point. The second one's you mentioned about pre-application advice. And I don't expect you to be able to answer it right now, but I would be intrigued to know what percentage of those people that come in for pre-app advice actually go on to get their application passed when they've adhered to the advice that we've given them at the pre-app advice. I know in the past I've heard a few disgruntled applicants who are saying, I came in for pre-app, I paid good money for it, and then they turned me down even though I listened. So I'd just be intrigued to know what the actual percentages are around that. Thank you.
Yeah, just to respond to that latter point, I think, and it's hearsay, it's not based on any actual facts, but my understanding is that generally the pre-app service works well. People feel that it brings benefit, and we only hear about the odd one that goes against. And pre-app advice can only be given on the basis of what is submitted and the information they have at the time. What we also don't do as part of the pre-app advice is we're not able to plug into bodies such as the LLFA or county highways or Natural England, bodies like that who have their own paid advice service. So we do have limitations, but we are conscious of that, and we do try to ensure, and it's signed off by senior managers, that the advice is accurate and as up to date as it possibly can be. But there will always be issues, unfortunately, and there will be occasions where we don't tend to hear about them, where we say that an application may have problems, you need to address X, Y, and Z, and it may be refused, and they come in and they've done everything, and we managed to move forward. But it is anecdotal, William, not with any facts, but I can have a look at that. And in terms of staff generally, and I know it's probably a hostage to fortune, but morale is good, and I think people are excited about coming over to Breckland. We have quite a high percentage, particularly amongst building control and development management officers, who come into the office regularly. You will often, particularly sort of the first few hours of the day, see building control officers in the building and planning officers as well, and they do that because they like the working atmosphere. They get on very well with their Breckland colleagues around them, and there's a genuine excitement, I think, about coming over to Breckland. And the reason why they've been here so long is I think because of the working atmosphere within the office and the people they work with, both within the planning and building control service, but also within the council itself. So yeah, we need to make sure that continues.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Just two very quick points from myself. Firstly, I was very pleased to see you mention tree preservation orders in your report. I'm often concerned with everything else going on in the department. That's a sort of a small element, but actually really important, because we've got some fantastic examples of trees across the district. My concern is that we tend to only notice that a tree doesn't have a TPO when there's an application that comes forward, or sometimes, frankly, when the tree is gone and how did that happen? There was no TPO. So I just wonder if there's any work that goes on to proactively register certain trees and put TPOs on them across the district where we've got those sort of flagship examples. And then secondly, with the service changing from the 1st of July, I'm sure, and you listed a whole load of KPIs on the screen that don't form part of our performance report, and we've got that later in the agenda. And I just wonder if there's conversations taking place about what KPIs we need to be monitoring as part of the performance report with the change happening, because I think that gives us an opportunity to review how we monitor the performance. And I think William's point about monitoring morale and some of those sort of things actually are quite important, because retention of staff is absolutely crucial to the service. So.
Yeah, thank you for that. Just sort of dealing with the second point first. Yeah, there are discussions timetabled and taking place about KPIs and how we address performance, because it's important. And I don't think we can underplay the importance of knowing how a service is operating. And that's not a reflection on the individuals in the service. It's to make sure that we can address issues at an early stage where there are issues around performance. In terms of trees, we don't proactively go around and look at trees and TPO them just as a matter of caution. There has to be a degree of risk to the loss of that tree, because putting a TPO on a tree places quite a responsibility on the owner, and very often it's met with resistance. Where we are proactive is if we have a planning application and it's quite clear that trees of interest and worth within that application will be under threat, then we will place tree preservation orders on those trees before the application is determined, and we will do it without telling anybody, obviously. It is just a matter of getting the order authorised and serving it, and then dealing with the application on that basis. It doesn't automatically mean that one or more of those trees couldn't come out. It just means we have better control over mitigation, replacement, etc. So that's why we are quite heavily proactive.
Is there an opportunity for members to be more proactive in making you aware of certain trees in our wards? I'm thinking, in my ward we've got some fantastic twisted pines, which I know are not TPO'd, but actually should be.
We're more than happy to look at any tree that residents, parishes, towns, members think should be protected. There is it's planning, so there's going to be a process, but there is a process to go through in terms of the visual amenity impacts of the tree. So it has to be publicly visible, it has to be in fairly good health and have a reasonable life expectancy, etc., etc. So there's a scoring mechanism that sets that out. But no, we're quite more than happy to look at trees where people think there is a risk.
Thank you very much.
Chairman, sorry.
Yes, piqued your interest with trees?
Yeah, not quite a tree hugger, but I do appreciate a good tree. Just a question, obviously we've now had the local plan and the call for sites. So is your department actually looking and monitoring and deciding some of those trees that are in those calls for sites actually to be prepared to be TPO'd, so we're actually ahead of the curve on those points? Or is that something really, as a two-way thing, and members should be involved with as well? Because obviously we know those sites potentially in the next 10, 15 years should be developed. Perhaps we need to be protecting those trees now rather than trying to do it reactively.
As part of the analysis of the sites through the call for sites, the environmental impact of development is something that we need to look at. We wouldn't ordinarily go out and mass TPO trees within those sites, but we will be talking to the developers, and the policies will make clear how we need to deal with trees within those sites. We include the tree officer in those discussions, make them aware of it, and they know the site. So where there are specific issues, then yeah, if TPO is an appropriate tool, we will use it, but it's not something we would do as a matter of routine.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to move on to item 8, local plan update and progress report. Apologies to the pair of you, but it's a number of items for you today. And Sam, a bit of variety.
Great. Thanks, Chairman, and thanks to the Commission for asking. So, as you'll be aware, I'm leading on the local plan review, which is taking place within the Council. So Sam and I will go through about 22 slides in total. Some members will have seen these at a recent briefing session, but it'll allow you some context to where we are now as you move through. Next slide, please, Ruth. So the agenda itself, just want to look at the timeline and the stage of the process and a bit of a call to arms and using this opportunity whilst we're live streaming and going on the video to ensure that the public understand their role and how they can engage in this process, Chairman. Looking at that criteria-based policy, which we've worked through in that wider consultation and the member working group and all member briefing session and working group sessions to understand how we can move that forward. Looking at some of the strategic sites across the district where we're seeing those higher growth locations and actually some of the constraints around those and what that means if we aren't able to move those forward. Looking at gypsy traveller assessment across the district, some of the risks currently attributed to that from where we are today and what we're doing, working with partners, particularly at County Council, to work through that to make sure we're providing adequate, suitable and appropriate locations for gypsy travellers. Some specific policies which members have asked us to look at and review from the previous plan, and then just our engagement process as we move forward.
Thank you. And some of you members will have a sense of deja vu because you'll have seen quite a bit of this if you came to the member briefing, but make no apology for that. I think it's probably appropriate to share in this forum. So thanks, Ruth. Next slide. So that's a pictorial representation of where we are in the local plan process at the moment, and we will share these slides after, so you're aware of it. So you can see there, just to the right, mid up, edged in red, that the consultation and engagement under Reg 18, and that consultation runs from Monday the 3rd of June to the 15th of July. Out of that, having regard to the work that we're doing and the consultation responses, we're looking to provide a draft Regulation 19 submission plan by the end of 2024. Thank you, Ruth. So in terms of criteria-based policy, thank you, Ruth. One of the things that we're putting forward through this consultation process is the removal of settlement boundaries for towns and villages. And there's various reasons for that, as listed there. We think that can provide an organic growth to villages, that it reduces the risk of loss of open space within a village centre and within a village itself. It's giving us the ability to have a positive approach to windfall development in rural areas, so that's small-scale, unallocated development. It can support additional development capacity. We believe that it would protect the character of settlements and the countryside whilst enabling sustainable development. So the policies we've got at the moment can be viewed as maybe being a bit clunky in that respect. It gives us the ability to be more flexible and more proactive in terms of how development relates to villages, and that it enables us to really try and use those policies to meet the area's housing needs. Thank you, Ruth. So the policies that will support the local plan, the main ones are Gen 02, Gen 03 and Gen 04. So we're looking to identify the settlement hierarchy. So we have our market towns, then going down to our local service centres, our secondary villages, and then our smaller villages, which is largely in line with what we have at the moment. The labelling's just slightly different. So Gen 03 identifies and defines what we mean by built form, because that will be the definition on which development adjacent to villages will have to have regard to. And Gen 04 talks about how development and the built form can control growth in the countryside. So it's all about making sure that we identify the characteristics of villages, local service centres, etc., and ensure that we're able to protect those characteristics whilst at the same time enabling appropriate development within there. Thanks, Ruth. So we have a criteria for windfall development within the market towns, the local service centres and secondary villages, and we're looking at sites being adjacent to the built form the definition that's set out in the plan. There is a sort of sequential process here, so we're looking to reuse previously developed land. We want to be able to be sure that where we're looking to approve applications, that those will be delivered over time, that housing has a mix that will meet locally identified need. There may well be a mix of market housing and local need housing there to make sure that that's viable and deliverable. Incremental and organic growth, so we're looking at where sites will be in relation to the villages or the service centres, the scale and nature of those, seeking to ensure that there's no loss of open space. If you have a settlement boundary, that open space becomes more under pressure, and that there's no detrimental impact on the character and appearance. And those are what the policies will try to achieve. Thank you. So HOU 6 relates to windfall development in the smaller villages. So we carry forward the criteria, but we're limiting it to proposals that meet local housing need, essentially. We see this as a way of trying to maximise housing that benefits the communities in which it's associated. So we're looking at affordable housing, first homes, community-led development, specialist needs, custom self-build. Within those specialist needs, that could be anything like assisted living, veterans housing, things of that nature. Thank you, Ruth. So strategic sites. Thanks, Ruth. So we're looking at strategic sites options as part of this consultation. In relation to housing, we have the three options. One that takes in southwest Dereham and the other standalone sites within Dereham, looking at that as a whole. Robertson's Barracks in Swanton Morley and Hohen Worthing, and Barker's Farm in Larling. We have a development team for each, working with the promoters and statutory partners. Those statutory partners include the county council in relation to things like highways, education, flooding, etc., but also health partners as well. So we're trying to make sure that we cover off at an early stage all the potential issues that may arise, and we'll come on to that in more detail in a minute. As part of that, we want to work with them collaboratively to provide the evidence required for that next stage. So what we're saying to them effectively is that we will work with you and with our partners to ensure that we produce the evidence that enables us to have confidence, if we choose to take those sites forward, that they can be delivered and the right infrastructure put in place at the right time. In terms of employment, we're looking at Snetterton as a major employment growth area, and again we're looking at we're working with developers, promoters and statutory partners to deliver that as well. Thanks, Ruth. So the first strategic site in relation to housing is at Dereham, and we're looking, with all the sites taken into account, at just over 2,500 there. But we're very conscious, can't stress that enough, of the issues that there are around Dereham and the surrounding area, particularly in relation to transport and flooding. We're also conscious that there are ambitions around things such as a country park, and we need to make sure that education and health are put into. I've gone dead. I knew eventually it'd get fed up of me. So, as I say, we're working with stakeholders to seek to ensure that those issues are adequately boxed off at this stage. Robertson's Barracks at Swanton Morley and Hohen Worthing. As yet, there is no fixed. There's no fixed number for that, but we're looking at circa 2,000 dwellings. Transport modelling, etc., will be extremely key in terms of establishing what those numbers are. All of these sites we're looking at mixed-use environment developments, so we will be looking at potentially schools if necessary, community hubs, employment where we're able to do so. Thank you, Ruth. So Barker's Farm, which is a greenfield site just to the north of the A11, circa 1,900 dwellings. Again, looking around transport, connectivity, environment, ecology, will all be issues that we need to address there. Well, I would say that we're not looking at any of these sites for sort of immediate delivery. This is trying to take a long-term strategic view over the next sort of couple of reviews of the local plan, really, to almost get a pipeline in place. Thank you. So in terms of Snetterton, again, transport, connectivity, how do we tie Snetterton in with Attleborough and Thetford, for example, where there's housing growth, but maybe not quite so much employment growth? How do we make sure that we look at a good range of industrial uses there, and that we're not just looking at big sheds, even though that's what the demand quite clearly is for. So there is work to be done there. We're working with Boudica, with Johnson's, with the business park and others to ensure that we can deliver that. Thank you, Ruth. So in terms of Gypsy and Travellers, Sam alluded to that previously. Thank you. So we've not long had the Gypsy and Traveller assessment in that needs to support our local plan, and that's talked about the need going forward over the plan period. It talks about an immediate need of 9 pitches within the first part of the plan period, and then 9 and 14 in the 2 5-year periods going beyond that. As you can see, at the moment our supply is 11 pitches within that time frame, whereas the need is for 50 pitches, and the requirement therefore is for a net 39 within those first five years. Next slide, please. So we have a number of options to find those sites. We are engaging with the Gypsy and Traveller Liaison Officer at County Council, who is providing support and a critical friend to us in relation to this work. And to be found sound, we need to meet the area's objectively assessed needs for gypsies and travellers, and many a local plan at the moment has been halted because of failure to do that, and we want to avoid that. So we have options and a plan in place to go for a call for sites, to see whether there is the ability to make provision on the strategic sites coming forward, working with the County Council's liaison officer to look at existing sites and see whether there's scope to extend or increase the density on those. As a last resort, putting policies in place that will enable us to have a criteria-based approach to the location of gypsies and travellers, much along the way that we do at the moment, and also to work with registered providers to see if they have sites or the ability to help in terms of finding those sites. The advice we've got, and we're confident, is that if we can demonstrate that we've been through all those areas of work to try and deliver sites, and we've not been able to do so, and we can provide a clear audit trail that demonstrates that, then that should be acceptable to an examining inspector. Thank you, Ruth. So in terms of specific policies, thank you. There's a number of new or enhanced policies within the draft plan. We're looking to strengthen policies to address issues around climate change and net zero targets and health and well-being. Those are not only sort of Breckland specific issues and things we want to address as a council, but they also reflect the national position and the sort of the targets for responding to climate change going forward. We also want to ensure that our key wildlife sites, such as the Brecks Special Protection Area in the River Wensum, Special Area Conservation, are protected. And we've seen whereby if we don't work with stakeholders such as the Rivers Trust, such as landowners, agricultural providers, etc., then those can very quickly become issues around development. We're looking to include a new suite of proposed areas of local green space, as well as retaining and protecting the district's existing areas of open space, parks and playing fields. And I know local green space is something that's very important to residents, and a lot of neighbourhood plans have taken that forward specifically. There are sections on communities and neighbourhood planning and how neighbourhoods and parish councils can plug into the planning system. We're addressing broadband, and we're addressing skills and training as well. Thank you, Ruth. So engagement process, 3rd of June to the 15th of July. Thank you. So we're looking at 11 events, a mix of in-person and virtual sessions, and those will start next week going forward. We're also looking at after work and lunchtime sessions to try and make it as convenient as possible. Officers, it says planning policy attending all public events, but I know that there is also support from development management colleagues, and I'll be going to one or two as well. I've been before, and they're actually really interesting events. We're simplifying the Commonplace webpage, and that should be up any day now. We're looking at an interactive map to post comments, as well as the tutorials, which are in the process of being recorded. FAQs and local plan myth busting, which is done. We're looking at offering additional virtual events if necessary, providing recordings and presentations. We also want to use the council's existing media, Facebook, Instagram, etc., to maximise the reach of the consultation process, and using QR codes to track engagement, so we can see the demographic and the areas in which people are responding, and maybe take remedial action if we feel that there are significant gaps. I think it's important to say that we're working with people like the youth boards, etc., to try and make sure that we reach all the elements of the community. We've also started work on the playing pitch strategy, and as part of that we will be engaging with schools and other youth groups and community groups to get their views. Thank you, Ruth. So, any questions?
Lovely. Thank you very much, Simon and Sam. Anybody got any questions on local plan? Yep, Robert.
Thank you, Chairman. Probably going back 2 local plans ago, Dereham was found to be severely constrained by the ability to expand secondary education. I think at that time that was maximum 2,000 houses, which has been well exceeded. So is that still a constraint, or have pupil numbers changed to alter that? Thank you.
I don't know the exact numbers. What I do know is that the Education Authority are sitting on our development board and feeding into that, so we will understand what the requirements will be brought about by the development that we're looking at, both in Dereham and probably at Robertson's Barracks as well, and where we will need to utilise existing provision or make new provision within those developments, or extend existing schools. So it's all there in the equation.
Thank you. Any further questions, please? I appreciate this has been to Cabinet and it's been discussed at the briefing, so I think most points have been well dealt with. Happy? Just for myself, Simon, very pleased to see reference to Commonplace being updated. I accessed it myself a while ago and was completely confused. I wonder if you're going to trial it with some people that are perhaps not from the planning department before it goes live. I think that would be really useful.
I can take that away. Yeah, we can take that away. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah. Great. Okay. No one else indicating, so we'll move on. Thank you, Sam. And the last planning item today, planning enforcement process, and actually there's some paperwork to go with this on pages 15 to 19, so thank you for circulating that in advance. Is there anything you want to add to the report that's written there?
I have, yes, another little presentation, Chairman. As if you've not heard enough from me today. This is relatively short, but I think it just brings out the main. It just brings out the main points. So thank you, Ruth. So just very quickly, just bringing out the main points from the report. So there's a clear definition of what a breach of planning control is. The carrying out a development without the required planning permission or failing to comply with conditions or limitations. And development has a clear definition as well within the Town and Country Planning Act. So it's clear that we're operating within quite a rigid and well-defined legislative regime. Thank you, Ruth. As you know, there are constraints in terms of when we can take action, and recent legislation has changed the time limits in relation to when a development becomes immune from enforcement. I think it's fair to say that enforcement is one of our busiest service areas. We probably get upwards of 300 plus complaints a year. All of them have to be looked at. Not all of them lead to anything. But it's important that when people see breaches of control, they go through that proper process of logging it and allowing the process to work its way through. In terms of the time limits, as I say, the Levelling Up Bill changed those time limits, and development becomes immune from enforcement if no action is taken within 10 years of substantial completion for a breach of planning control, where that took place on or after the 25th of April 2024. So this isn't retrospective, this is relating to post-April 2024. And that's the main change, really. The key one is in relation to the 4 years of substantial completion consisting of operational development. That used to have a wider time limit than that. Thank you, Ruth. So there are exceptions to those time limits where an enforcement notice is defective, though we can reserve notices where they are defective. Following an enforcement warning notice, and I'll come on to those in a minute, and where there is considered to have been deliberate concealment of a breach of planning control. So most of you will be familiar with the case where a house was hidden by a load of straw bales for many years. They were then removed, and voila, the house was there. And it's issues, matters like that that have led to this change in legislation. So thank you, Ruth. So we have a number of options set out there, ranging from no formal action to enforcement notices and temporary and full injunctions. And I'll just run through those very quickly. So no formal action can often be the quickest and most effective way of achieving a satisfactory and lasting remedy. And I think it's very, sorry, Ruth. I run away from myself. So I think it's important to make the point that it is not mandatory to take enforcement action where there is a breach of control. It is a discretionary decision for a local planning authority, and it should only be used in the most extreme of circumstances where there are no other formal or informal remedies, and that it is considered to be a significant breach of planning control. Often ignorance can be a reason, and things are rectified once that is pointed out. It's no excuse, but it can be a reason. We should avoid action where there's a trivial or technical breach of control. So if window shapes are slightly different than the approved plan, or an extension is just a few inches out, there's a phrase de minimis, and if something is de minimis and has no impact, then we shouldn't be taking any action or making an issue of it. If something is acceptable on its planning merits and the action would be solely to regularise development, we shouldn't be taking action then. And there are ways now that we can seek to ensure that applications are submitted to regularise that, which we'll come on to. And we can, as I say, take a view that that would be the most appropriate way to regularise the situation, and could, for example, allow planning conditions to be imposed. Thank you, Ruth. Oh, sorry, am I squeaking? Yeah. Okay. It might just be my voice now. Retrospective planning application. So we can invite an application if we consider that this is the appropriate way to regularise the situation. And we now have the ability to issue what's called an enforcement warning notice, which requires that application to be submitted in order to be regularised. Even if we invite applications, there's no assumption that the application would be granted. It'd be considered in the normal way. And even if an application is submitted, we can still issue an enforcement notice either on that element of the development or other elements of the development if appropriate. Thanks, Ruth. So planning contravention notice, effectively this is a fact-finding notice, but it is a legal document. We would issue that in discussion with legal advisors to seek information about land ownership and tenants of the land, to identify the breaches of control and the timeframes around that, and any other information that may be considered to be relevant and necessary to enable us to make an informed decision. Again, it's discretionary. We don't have to serve a planning contravention notice before we serve an enforcement notice, but it is recommended and sensible to do so. Thank you, Ruth. Stop notice. We have the ability, if there are significant breaches of control, to issue either a temporary or full stop notice. These essentially would require all activities on site that formulate the breach of control to stop. If you're serving a stop notice, you have to follow it up with an enforcement notice. So a temporary stop notice can often be used to require a breach of control to cease immediately, and it gives you breathing space in terms of negotiating with landowners around how matters can be resolved whilst preventing any further breaches. Again, a change. It used to be 28 days. It's now 56 days before such a notice expires. Need to be aware that under some circumstances, costs can be awarded against the local planning authority if a stop notice is inappropriately served. Breach of condition notice. This requires its recipient to secure compliance with the terms of a planning condition or conditions. It's usually an alternative to an enforcement notice, but you can serve it alongside it. If a breach of condition notice is not complied with, then that's a criminal offence, and prosecution can be brought in the magistrate's court and remedy be sought, and it can be an ongoing offence. Thank you, Ruth. Injunctions. These are extremely serious tools to use, but we can go to the High Court or a county court for an injunction to restrain a breach of planning control. Quite clearly, we have to have put a lot of thought into whether or not that is appropriate. It's expensive. The implications are extremely significant in terms of landowners and people who are carrying out the breach of control, but they're also significant for the local planning authority if it gets it wrong as well. So we should, as it says, we should only apply for an injunction as a last resort, and only if there have been persistent breaches of planning control. We shouldn't be applying injunctions on rumour and innuendo and what we think may happen. We have to have good evidence that something may or has just occurred whereby we think it's expedient to take out an injunction or a temporary injunction. The planning enforcement order, this comes back to the concealment argument and is a relatively new tool in the planning enforcement toolbox, and it relates effectively to the ability of an authority to take action in relation to a breach of planning control, notwithstanding that the time limits may have expired. So where it's considered that there's been deliberate concealment of a breach of control, then a local planning authority can go to a magistrate and make an application to take enforcement action and provide its evidence to do so. Enforcement notices, I reiterate again, the power to issue an enforcement notice is discretionary, and we have to be satisfied that there's been a breach of planning control and it's expedient to issue that notice. The breach of control does generally have to be serious, and there has to be no other remedy. We can do what is known as under enforcement, so we can enforce and require certain elements of the development to be altered to make it acceptable. It's not often used, but it can be a useful tool. There's a right of appeal against enforcement notices, and one of the grounds of appeal is that planning permission should be granted. It is an offence not to comply with that notice, and once the period for compliance has elapsed, there is no outstanding appeal provision, and enforcement is done through the magistrates' court. Thank you, Ruth. So just finally, just a quick snapshot of the enforcement process. So we receive our complaints using the online form. They're triaged by the manager. If there's no breach, they're closed and they're allocated if they need investigation. As you'll appreciate and set out in the report, we often get complaints that are better dealt with by other regulatory bodies, such as the Lead Local Flood Authority, County Highways, Environment Agency, bodies such as those, and we will pass the complaints on to them and advise the complainant that is what we've done and they should continue to pursue that. We will investigate, we prioritise cases, so that where there's an urgent breach of control, we will aim to get out within the same day, but more straightforward breach of control, it may be a few days before we're able to get out there. And at the end of that, we will need to make a decision as to whether or not it's expedient to take any further action. What I would say is that if we do take action, there is that appeal process, and this is a long legal process. If we're going to take enforcement action or go through any of these, we need to make sure that all our legal ducks are fully lined up before we do that. And any questions?
Lovely. Thank you very much, Simon. Any questions on enforcement? Harry, please.
Thank you, Simon. Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just a quick query. So, future thoughts, Simon. Under the workload of 3.1, you had 390 cases received. Obviously, you only proceeded to 2 actual enforcement notices. It might be helpful, potentially, explaining the workload to link the workload up with the options. So, in other words, out of the 390, how many things, obviously, they fell far short of the enforcement notice. It's just that distribution, and that would also possibly help members on the planning committee and elsewhere in terms of the workload on the department going forward. Thank you. Thank you.
No, I think that's a good suggestion. Thank you.
I'll turn myself off now. David, next, please.
Sorry, Chairman, I had exactly the same question. Sorry.
There we go. Any further questions? No, just quickly for myself, Simon, communication. Every time I've felt the need to report something using the system to report an enforcement issue, I don't think I've ever had any update or feedback as to what happened to it. Is there a process by which members are kept informed of progress, or would you send it in and hope something happens?
You should get an acknowledgement of any complaint that's received, and that should give you details of when we will update. With such a caseload, it's not possible to have routine updating, and we try and update when there is a change in circumstance in relation to that case. But I think it's a reflection of the number of cases and the resources that we have that we do I think I would be wrong if I said that our updated process is foolproof. And I think occasionally a nudge, certainly from members, is often welcome, and quite happy to take things up. But we do try and update when there are changes.
Noted. Thank you. I'm going to move on. Can I just check, Andrew? We were expecting some outside people for item 11. Are they still coming, or?
They are. They're in the building.
Oh, okay. Do you want me to take that next, or do you want me just to deal with item 10 and then?
Deal with item 10.
That's fine. Just checking. So item 10 is the performance and projects report. Thank you very much for coming along, Alison, and I can see you've got Mark and Ryan behind you. Pages 20 to 29 in the report. Is there anything you'd like to add to what we've already received?
Obviously, do you want me to go through the usual text? I think some people have heard it before. I haven't got slides for 30 PowerPoint slides or anything.
I'm somewhat relieved you don't have slides, so thank you. But if you could give us the highlights,
okay,
I'm conscious
right,
we have received it.
Yeah, okay. So we're looking at performance for quarter 4, January to March 2024. Pleasing data in quarter 4. The majority of our key performance indicators are at or near target. The Council continues to perform well in many metrics, and importantly, it is able to report on further indicators in relation to housing. This is a result of the housing team, amongst others, completing work on their systems to allow for this additional reporting to be brought forward. Areas this quarter where performance have been challenging include standards complaints dealt within the timescale. You will note that the Council has previously reported 100% for this metric, but quarter 4 saw it drop to 86%. During further investigation, this related to a single complaint that was responded to past the due date. The reason for such a fluctuation is due to the low number of standard complaints we receive, which is good, meaning even a single complaint being responded to late can cause the percentage to change quite a lot. Excuse me. The second area relates to website accessibility. This is a continuation of what was discussed in the quarter 3 report, as technical limitations prevent us from returning to target level quickly. These are actively being addressed under the website redesign project, which I've talked to you quite a bit about. Indicator targets are due to be reviewed ahead of the quarter 1 24-25 performance report. This includes reviewing current targets and developing targets for any indicators which yet don't have one. Changes may be made on the basis of performance over the last 12 months, legislative requirements and benchmarking data. This will be specifically highlighted in the quarter 1 report. As Councillor Hewitt is not here today, I'll be doing the projects one as well, so bear with. There are now 14 high priority projects being overseen by the Corporate Project Service, details of which can be found within the report appendices. Progress is being maintained on key projects such as the implementation of new and improved software for the planning and building control teams, which we've talked about already, and the purchase and refurbishments of homes to support the current challenges around temporary accommodation. Thank you. I have Ryan here for performance and Mark for projects to help with any technical questions. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Lovely. Thank you, Alison. Anything you want to add, either Ryan or Mark? No. Any questions from members? Keep it brief, Harry.
Thank you. I need a brownie point, Chairman. Thank you. Under performance quarter 4, looking at the 2 top items, one is around Serco. It's only 12 instances where Serco haven't met contractual obligations, so it might be useful in terms of, it says target there, it says to be confirmed, so it might be useful if that was a higher number, where that broken down so we know which are the particular issues that where Serco is exceeding or not meeting those targets. And the other one which I've noted commenting on is disabled facilities grants, which has obviously fallen 39% in that quarter there, which is disappointing. So those are my sort of comments, observations, questions, Chairman. Thank you.
Yep.
So I'll pick up the last point first. So DFGs, I can get back to you in writing, because I have been supplied by the housing manager with something on that, and I think it's due to payments and stuff like that in terms of when the money comes in from government. In terms of Circa, we do get a breakdown from the service in terms of trends, and that's something that we do monitor. There's been nothing specifically we've brought out from the trends in terms of that indicator so far since we brought it in Q1.
Lovely, thank you. No further questions. Just Ryan, on the conversation we had earlier about planning, I know you was in the room for that, and I'm reassured that there's conversations taking place. Is it your intention to bring back to the Commission some proposals around KPIs to add to the report for future editions?
So, thank you. So it's sort of broken down into two bits. So there'll be some changes to the report in Q1 which we can go through. In terms of when we did this review 12 months ago, there were things which we could bring in at that time. There were things which were going to take a little bit longer to bring in. So those are indicators we've developed over the last 12 months. That should as well pick up some of the stuff we've discussed around communities before as well, and those changes. In terms of planning, that's a bit of a separate one because obviously there's got to be the work for planning to come in-house first and all of that, and then there'll be a separate discussion we'll have with them in terms of what KPIs look like moving forward. My only comment in terms of the KPIs that Simon spoke about and the KPIs we have in that, those KPIs around the contract, so those are the ones we do as the contract performing, and these KPIs are around the corporate plan. So we do record them all. They're just chopped a little bit differently. So some of the stuff that's a KPI within that will be a PI within what we would look at in terms of the corporate plan delivery. What we'll do, obviously, when that's in-house is that sort of step gets removed. So we'll just have, these are the KPIs and it all relates to the corporate plan. These are the PIs, these are the statistics. But yeah, so Q1, there'll be some changes which we can discuss. There'll be a longer term piece around planning, which is yet to be timetabled in, but that will be brought forward in time.
Thank you. I am very keen, members of the Commission, to have an opportunity to input on those KPIs. So I'll make that point now, but I'm really pleased that the work's going on. I'm going to pause it there, folks. So I'm conscious we've been going for nearly 2 hours. And as exciting as the skills plan is, I need a coffee. So we'll just pause it there, give you a chance to have a comfort break, and if we could be back by 12 o'clock, my intention is to finish the meeting by 12:30, just to give you an indication of timing. Okay, if I could ask you to take your seats, folks, and we'll make a start. Are you good, Ruth?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. Thank you for that. We'll move on to item 11, which is the Breckland Skills Plan. We've got Paul Clausen here, Cabinet Member. I'll hand over to you, Paul, and Andrew, and if you could introduce the team, that'd be appreciated.
Okay, well, I'll leave Andrew to introduce the rest of the team, but which are County Council and Breckland. So skills has been something that we wanted to get involved with for a long, long time, and Andrew will take you through why now and what we hope to be doing in the short term, medium term and long term. And that's as brief as I'll be, Chairman. Thank you.
Much appreciated.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Chair. And conscious you've had a long meeting, I will also try and keep you to the key points. We circulated some paperwork in advance of this, and hopefully that's kind of helped spell out some of the what we're doing and why. Very pleased to be joined by Joe from Norfolk County Council, and also Dave, who's in the business development team here at Breckland, who've been kind of key to some of the work we've been doing here. Hopefully one of the things that you will pick up from this, that kind of partnership and engaging all the different participants in the skills sector has been a key to how we've got here. Some of the business community had hoped to join, but kind of diaries didn't quite align, but there's an open offer, Chair, if there's a kind of appetite for some further debate on this around bringing some of the business voices into this discussion, as well as some of the skills providers. So in very brief terms then, as Paul sort of set out, skills is something that's been an interest and a challenge to the district for some time, and we have taken the view that we would like to bring forward a more considered and better articulated approach to skills specifically for Breckland. This is not a statutory requirement for us, and we're kind of playing in a space where we don't control a lot of levers, but the decision to do something more considered in this space is kind of led by a few factors. So one is just need. So bluntly, there are challenges as well as opportunities in this space in terms of the kind of skills levels within the population and our ability to meet future growth needs and ability to grow a higher wage economy. There's been quite a lot of developments in the partnership context, so we've been fortunate enough to be working very closely with not just the business community but training providers, the county, and this is all in the context of quite a changing landscape as well. So things like the potential devolution deal are changing the way that resourcing happens. So whilst we don't have to do this, I think it's felt like it's the right thing to do this. And hopefully what we can get from discussion with yourselves today and the discussions that follow is an approach that everyone in Breckland is proud of and happy about, and happy to be innovative and pushing the boundaries. Our intention through this work has been to be led as far as we can by evidence and insight. So the paper that we circulated includes some kind of snapshot highlights from some of the key data points. We've also been keen to compare that and challenge that alongside what the feedback from the business community is, what the feedback from the skills community, what the feedback from schools is, to try and build as clear a picture as possible about what we think the issues and opportunities are. And in kind of really simple terms, the challenge that we set ourselves is to set out an ambitious long-term vision for where we want skills to be in the future for the district, but in doing so to be realistic about the role that we can play in this, as well as the role that we want partners to play in this as well. So we've tried in the paper that you've been shared to kind of walk that tightrope of long-term ambition but near-term realistic and achievable. So it's sort of set out in greater detail in the paper. We're effectively proposing a plan for skills for Breckland, which focuses on a few areas that are deemed to be amongst the highest priority. So one is access, in that one of the things that we're acutely aware of is that people's ability to access skills is one of the biggest barriers to them gaining the right qualifications and better qualifications and the support they need in the labour market. And the solutions to access could be numerous. They could be bringing more provision direct into the district and direct into people's places. They could be helping people digitally access or improving connectivity so that they can move around the district more easily. But we know from a data point of view, it is one of the most significant challenges to our local economy. Second point of priority proposed is around connections. So one of the things that came out very strongly in the engagement work we've done on this to date is there is just a plethora of stuff already out there in this space, whether that be apprenticeships or different grants to help businesses. But one of the challenges is just connecting it all together in a meaningful way. And there's a strong feeling that a partnership approach at a district level could help solve that with a bit of careful, clever working between partners. Third proposed focus around targeting specific and enhanced support around those who are most vulnerable and hardest to reach, so particularly NEETs, so those not in education or training, because there is a small but targetable group there where it's felt that we could make a positive difference by all rowing behind that. Penultimate proposed priorities around transitions, in that there's a strong sense from employers and schools that one of the biggest challenge areas is people leaving education and having them with the right employability skills, but also the right qualifications to enter the labour market, but also people transitioning from within the labour market, whether that be, we know we have a very large armed forces population here, so helping that cohort better access the labour market locally and better meet skills opportunities. And the final challenge intended to be a priority is around enterprise, so the kind of business-specific skills that are required to help grow the economy, particularly in the kind of SME space, which is a big feature of our economy currently. So as set out in the paper we've put forward, within each of these 5 areas, we effectively have a kind of rationale and a mission statement for this, and a number of key deliverables that we would want to see targeted in the next 12 months, 3 years, long term. The intention being to take this plan and seek adoption through the next available cabinet meeting, but also to use this as an opportunity to kind of continually refine with ourselves, with partners, about what good should look like for skills in Breckland. We have the opportunity of being able to leverage some resources immediately. So the government has allocated Breckland's funding through the UK Shared Prosperity Programme, and the intention is skills is allowed to be supported in this year of that programme for a substantial amount of that to be put towards the delivery and underpinning of this plan. But more importantly than this, we didn't want this to just be about a plan linked to an important but relatively small sum of money. The intention is this should be guiding our fundraising activity, our work with partners, our work with businesses about what it is that we should be doing as an authority and what we ask of partners in the future. So grateful for any kind of feedback from colleagues around the room about priorities and what we see fitting. That's a kind of very whistle-stop tour from myself. As partnership has been really important to this, so there's a lot of people who have input in the kind of shaping and framing of this. So I thought it would be useful to have a kind of another partner voice in the room from Joe from the county, and the county have been brilliant in helping frame and challenge some of this, and also to explain a little bit about one of the specifics that we hope to see brought forward through this in that kind of neat vulnerability space, which is a programme called Boost, which we're seeking to adapt to deliver specifically within the Breckland context. It's all right. Hand over to you, Joe.
Thank you. Hi everyone. So I'm Jo Mackenzie English, and I am the Skills Partnership Officer for Boost. And you know, we're really excited for this opportunity to be able to bring Boost into Breckland. So I'll just give you a little bit of an overview about what we've done, but from a county perspective, I think the 5 key points within the skills plan really aligns with the work that we're doing within NCC, and we're looking to implement this work across the county. That's the ambition. Touching on what Andrew said with the connections, is kind of how Boost started and how it's been successful within the West. So we kind of acted like a connection service between the schools, the training providers, the young people, and all the provision that's available there. We found when we first started to work in that area that there was a lot of services, but nobody really knew about each other, so we started to sort of bring that together. So Boost, as I said, is a sort of tried and tested programme. So we ran it for 2 years in Kings Lynn just as part of the Town Deal project, but we've now received further funding to run it right across West Norfolk, which started in beginning of May. So in the 2 years when we ran Boost just in Kings Lynn, we were targeted with reaching 400 young people, but we actually supported 589 young people. Out of those 589, 255 young people gained some sort of certificate, whether that was accredited or non-accredited. We were targeted with reaching 50 employers, but we actually worked with 70. And we also targeted with creating 12 new courses, but we actually created 16. So really proud of that work, and that's something that we want to bring across into Breckland to, improve the area, improve the skills offer, etc. So one of the questions might be, how are we going to achieve that? So we've employed a team of knowledgeable professionals. So the 2 people that are employed, will be starting shortly, have experience with working with young people, with the young people that experience barriers, are harder to reach, but also have that employer engagement experience as well. So reaching out to the employers, not only to support their staff and upskill their staff, but also to work with them on things like work experience or workplace tours, etc., to try and expand their staff. And we know that there's an ageing population, so we want to bring in younger generation, younger skills into workforce. So we understand that Breckland is a different area, and we know that there's going to be different challenges here, but it's all about making connections in the area and understanding what the barriers are that young people and employers face, and how can we resolve that by utilising the opportunities that we have in Boost. So we've looked at training interventions such as ESOL, which is English as a second language. So we know that there's a high proportion of immigration here in Breckland. So that's one of the things that we'd like to expand on. So it's currently offered through the Multiply training programme, but they also offer it in libraries and things like that. So that's something else that we can expand on. We aim to work with referral partners, so there'll be things like social workers, family hubs, schools, GP surgeries, or the secondary primary care, etc., even the police and things like that. So we know that there's a really high number of young people out there that need our support, but it's about making those connections to find out where they are and how we can support them. We like to work in a person-centred way. So for me, it's about understanding what inspires that young person and how we can, plug that skill gap by what it is that they really are interested in doing. Because if you get somebody that is interested in something, they're going to thrive. And that way we can then build on their skills and their qualifications as well. So taking it from their interests and then developing a programme of support around that will help them to achieve and survive. So what we'd like to do is try to replicate the model that we have in Kings Lynn, because we know it already works, and we would like to bring that across to Breckland. Has anybody got any questions for me?
Thank you. Peter.
Thank you very much. It's good to hear that, Joe. I was aware of the Boost programme in Kings Lynn, and it came up when I brought it up at one of the Breckland Youth Advisory Board meetings last week, where young people are struggling with the skills, and the schools are not having the staff and information. I believe there is a digital now programme you brought out at County, which is only going to academy schools, I think, at the moment, where a young person can build a profile with their own digital programme, which is going to help But I think if you can involve the Breckland Youth Advisory Board, because they are in touch with all the students, young people, in particular the 82, 83 Portuguese students they have in the Thetford Academy as well. Certainly need that help also. So it'd be great if, I'm sure you've got the contacts at the Breckland Youth Advisory Board, so if we can link together with that and see where we're going, they'll feed the information in what's needed. And also, I'm a big promoter of the apprentice schemes as well, and it started off 5, 6 years ago, 6, 7 years ago, probably strong, but I think it's dropped off a little bit. I'd rather see a lot more put into that as well, a lot more support when young people are going through that programme, not to be left on the side. Well, thank you very much, we haven't got a place for you, and move on. And I don't like that. If people are going to companies are going to take apprentices on, then I think they should be supported at the end of that programme. Otherwise, don't engage with them. If you haven't got a position for them at the end, don't engage. Thank you.
Robert, please.
Thank you, Chairman. A significant number of the perhaps unskilled jobs are in food processing. So my question is there a sort of qualification and career structure that goes with that type of job?
We can take that between us. So there is. One of the kind of principal supporters of this has been Pooltech, who you might be aware of in Mattershall, and part of their specialism is in training and support into some of their sectors. So there are qualifications and qualification routes in there, and some of the kind of principal businesses that have been supporting this have been from that space. I think the kind of collective challenge for Breckland is to ensure that as much of the high value economy side of that sector is retained here and felt locally, and that as part of the investment that businesses are making in automation and their productivity, there's a kind of positive uplift as well for local residents. But yeah, it's food, agritech's one of the intended kind of sectoral focuses for this.
I think when you see the job adverts for that, there's often no reference to any sort of level of skills being asked for. That was something that could perhaps be enhanced.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, well, I understand the challenge. It's also an area of quite significant skill shortages at the moment, which hence some of the recruiters' behaviours.
Thank you. Fabian, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just first of all, I better declare an interest, as I'm actually the Cabinet Member at Norfolk County Council responsible for skills and did play a little bit of part in formulating this up. My only question is, just on the point, what has been mentioned is focusing on young people, which is brilliant. And I know we need to make sure the skills and making sure really that those opportunities come out to them, suit and fit them. We don't want to try and push them into a round hole when they're a square peg. And I know many people that have gone very well and chosen a career that's perhaps unorthodox and gone self-employed. But my other thing is, there is people that have perhaps changed their mind. What are we doing for those, shall we say, in that 30 to 55 age bracket? Because obviously it's there where their skills, they've already had that life experience in a work environment, but how do we make sure that they get those opportunities to change and still enable to remain in Breckland?
So one of the things that we look at is the skills boot camps. So that's for anybody over the age of 19, and they can be unemployed or in employment as well. So that's being able to retain a member of staff, and they'll be able to change their route of employment, change their direction through a skills boot camp. So there's quite a number of those, and there's some more being developed at the moment as well. So it's one of the methods that from my point of view, that could be used as a mechanism for changing your career path. But I think it's also about understanding what their inspiration is for changing their career path and how that could be linked in with what training is available already, and perhaps being funded through something like this, and bringing in that partnership with a training provider into the employer and looking what the employer's skills gaps is as well, so you can then enhance that company by having somebody upskilled in a different job role to what they're in already. That makes sense? Yep.
Just, Chairman, if you don't mind covering your ears, because I know you and I disagree on this point, but I'd just like to... It was on off, thank you. You heard that point anyway. I just would like just to mention, obviously, with the county deal coming up and the control of the adult education skills budget and that huge variation that we can actually do bespoke areas to fit in with skills which are required, right down to small classes of half a dozen. And I've just seen, even in your long-term plan, there's no mention of that and how that's going to fit in. So I just wondered if it actually is on your radar and you're preparing for that, please.
No, it absolutely is on the radar, and part of the logic of setting out a kind of skills mission statement for the district is to have a kind of strong way of engaging with county colleagues on what we think good should look like for here. We've not wanted to presume too much about kind of how that's all going to land and where it's going to sit, but absolutely one of the fundamental bits of logic for this is we want to have a strong position where we say this is what Breckland needs and what Breckland needs best in order to talk to different kinds of funders, and the devolution of AEB in that context could be potentially game changing. So yeah, we're acutely aware of it.
Thank you very much. Anyone else want to contribute? David.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I noticed under your within 12 months, which is encouraging, the mention of integrate skills into existing programmes, including Inspiring Communities and Swaffham. I'm a councillor for Swaffham, by the way, in terms of the historic market town. And one of the big issues we have in Swaffham, and I'm sure it's not possible for you to have any impact on this, is that we don't have a sixth form. And as chair of the Hammonds Education Trust, which I am, we are seeing huge requests from parents who are not well paid, and the cost of busing their children from Swaffham to a sixth form centre is a major deterrent. And I don't know whether Boost Breckland can have any sort of impact on that in talking, I guess, to the academy. I mean, I've spoken to the principal of the academy in Swaffham on several occasions about sixth form provision, and there's no sign of it in the near future, as far as I can see, which is incredibly sad. So we've got three schools all feeding in to one school, which doesn't have a sixth form. And I think in terms of the primary skills, I mean, obviously outside of work skills, educational skills, we are missing a trick there. And I don't know whether Boost Breckland, together with Breckland themselves, can have any influence on the academy, which is based in Birmingham, so it's not local, which is very sad also. But it's very frustrating. And as I said, we see huge number of applications for financial help for, you know, an annual bus cost to bus a student from Swaffham to Dereham, for example, is extraordinary. It's £900 or something. It's a lot of money anyway. So anything that Boost Breckland can help with that, I'd be more than happy to work with you to see if we can do something about it. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, David. That's useful.
And it's something that officers are very acutely aware of, not just in Swaffham, but across the whole district. And this is where Breckland will be back to influencing and enabling, which is really what is our role within this whole skills agenda. I don't know if you want to add anything.
Just to say, and it's probably a good example, one of the challenge Paul's given to us is saying, if we're doing a programme, what is the skills element to it? How can we support? So the Swaffham project at the moment with Historic England, part of the deliverables for that is partnering with the College of West Anglia to provide skills training for people in that construction space in the Swaffham market. And the intention through this plan is we are challenging ourselves in everything we do to think about what the skills uplift is. One of the things we want to solve is better access to further education, to sixth form, to higher education across the district. That's kind of not a likely thing to be solved in the next 12 months, but it's absolutely where we think we want to be and where we want to get to.
Thank you. Roger, please.
Thank you, Chairman. If you turn to page 33 of the report pack, shaping the plan, what the data is telling us, obviously there's some quite stark statistics down there about where we are in Breckland. How are you going to monitor progress against that, and how often will you be reporting back to this commission or the wider council as to whether we've made any improvements to those rates? Because to me that's quite key. But the other thing that goes hand in hand with that, and Paul will know this, is we've somehow in Breckland we've got to create the better paid, higher skilled jobs. We need to create the employment opportunities to entice those employers to move into Breckland who probably got the training provision and the skills that we need to help develop our young people, etc. So the two go hand in hand. I would like to know how we're going to monitor this. I think it's great. I think the skills plan is very, very good, very detailed, and I welcome it. I just wouldn't want to get to the end and I haven't seen any improvement in any of those data sets. Are we going to produce some kind of KPIs or something against that? And how often will that report back to this commission? I think is important.
It's a very good challenge. So quick version is yes. The way we envisage this happening is, so a lot of those points, they're not they're data that's not obviously controlled by us, but what we're doing should be influenced by them, and we should see positive changes if we're doing things right. We're having conversation with colleagues in terms of refreshing of KPIs and how much of this is helpfully pulled into that. So we see success measured in a few ways. One, what is happening in that kind of macro ONS picture and what difference is being made. Two, within individual programs, there'll be quite detailed KPI set. So Boost will have a number of quite clear measurables that we'll want to see in terms of people supported, people into employment at a kind of individual level. But we're also really keen to tie that back to what we're hearing from businesses, what we're seeing from providers in terms of uptake and uplift. So we intend to be monitoring this in kind of 3 key areas, and happy to kind of integrate that into existing reporting and have conversations about whether it's working. But yeah.
Thank you. Just coming back to what Fabian said a few minutes ago about this new deal for Norfolk. Paul, what work have we done so far to communicate with the County Council to make sure that Breckland gets a decent slice of that pie, bearing in mind the Cabinet member for Norfolk responsible is sitting here, to make sure that we get those employment opportunities brought into Breckland? That's going to require infrastructure improvements, etc., transport links, public transport. Are we doing a piece of work to say to them, this is what we need in Breckland to make that work?
It's ongoing. Hans Joe is here today, and so what you're seeing is the start of that process. Fabian and I do actually talk to each other, and he's totally aware of what's in the future Breckland. He's totally aware of the problems which you were highlighting there. We're all acutely aware of those. And the reason for me, it's great to be in this space at last, because for all of the time I've been a councillor here, they have been there. And if we do nothing, that's what we're going to get going forward. So we're completely sold on trying to, as I say, enable and influence. Roger.
Thank you. I think Fabian's going to tell us about his pie skills.
Well, first of all, I'd probably say I was probably responsible for the sixth form closing down, because I attended it and they probably didn't want anyone else like me going to anything like that again. Exactly. But firstly, again, it comes down to the area, like anyone else who's a twin out, I can't help but be being biased to go and help Breckland, and hopefully those in Great Yarmouth and Broadland appreciate that. And when I know all of you, it's very welcoming to come back and try and do new pilot schemes like we did Love Your Market Town, everything. It's there to be working for. And if we don't take advantage of those situations, we'd all be daft.
Yeah, just very quickly.
The other thing is, I think it's really important, if you're going to target training for young people, you need business and business sector champions to go into these schools and talk to these kids. One of the most frustrating things I found was a few years ago, I tried for a couple of years went into a local high school, talked to students about my sector, which is electrical engineering. Kids were really enthused. We talked about the range of things that could be done. What I found, what frustrated me in the end and why I gave up was the attitude of the school. Quite frankly, the careers person there just didn't seem enthused, was going through the motions, and somehow you've got to sort out that disconnect. You need people to go in. If you've got students who are interested in an engineering future, get people that are going to go in there and enthuse them. If they want to go into catering, same thing. That's really, really, I can't emphasise how important that is to make sure we get them enthused at the right age, probably before they start their GCSE. Is it year 10, year 11? Get in there, talk to them about the possibilities, and I don't think we've done that well enough. And I certainly, whether that's a funding issue at the schools, that they just go through the motions and haven't done that piece of work, but somehow we need to make sure that they do, and the school staff are enthusiastic about that link with business.
Thank you. I'm going to just wrap up there, folks, because I'm conscious of time. I'm personally really pleased that this piece of work is taking place. I think it's absolutely crucial to so many other aspects, whether that be life chances or housing or all sorts of things. And I can't remember who made the point about sobering, but 10% of the population, no skills, just over a quarter of residents educated to degree standard. Those statistics are scary, frankly, and it's absolutely right that we are focusing on this. So I'm very grateful for the piece of work taking place. I think you've probably got an indication of the passion in the room from members about skills. So I'd be very keen to have a conversation with you about at what point would be appropriate for you guys to come back and for us to review progress and contribute. I've got a couple of suggestions for priority areas myself, but I'll email them in rather than go through them now. And I would encourage other members to do the same, because I know there are different skills issues in different parts of the district, so that's on us to contribute that. But very grateful for you for coming along and at this early stage, and I think we would all be keen to see how it progresses and have some further conversations. So thank you very much. That leaves me to move on to item 12, outside body feedback. You hopefully have seen the report from Councillor Bambridge, which he circulated. Peter, anything from yourself?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just a quick one from the Breckland Youth Advisory Board. We've recommissioned the 3 major projects this year. One where we'll be tackling domestic and sexual violence experienced by young people. The anti-bullying programme is an ongoing project which we're taking young commissioners into schools now. Trained young commissioners have taken anti-bullying training sessions, and they're going into the schools. And we will be leading the way again and organising a anti-bullying conference in the autumn. And of course, we're pushing now the inclusive playground schemes. We're looking to get town and parish councils to sign the pledge to commit to inclusive playground equipment. And my job there will be working with our local MPs to see if we can get this on the Disability Act. But basically, that's a roundup. Thank you, Chairman.
Lovely. Thank you very much for that, Peter. It's useful. Any further outside body reports? Robert?
Thank you, Chairman. Health Scrutiny, Councillor Brenda Jones is the new chair, and Councillor Pallavi Devulapalli is the vice chair. They looked at the reporting of unexpected deaths from the Norfolk and Suffolk Foundation Trust. It's worth noting that serious mental health issues result in a 16 to 20 year reduction in life expectancy. Within the reporting period, there were 209 unexpected natural cause deaths, which are heart attacks, diabetes, etc., and 15 unexpected unnatural deaths, which tends to be suicides, and that's 3% of the total deaths of those who have been under the care of NSFT in the previous 6 months. Area museums on the 17th of June. Pleased to note that visitor numbers to both Gresson Hall and Ancient House in Thetford are back to pre-pandemic levels. Gresson Hall will be having their full programme of special events days this summer. There's a current exhibition of nurses who served when it was a workhouse, when it was a workhouse, and then when it was a sort of care home. And the Ancient House have just announced the 17th to the 21st July Festival of Thetford and the Punjab, and the Mela, which is on the Sunday the 21st, will be held in the grounds of Thetford Grammar School, which is a larger venue than the Green. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much for that, Robert. Moving on to item 13, scrutiny call-ins, there are none. Item 14, councillor call for action, there are none. Item 15, the work programme, it is in your packs, pages 41 to 49. You will see that our next Cabinet member presentation is Tristan Ashby, and Ruth and I need to have a conversation and work out who we haven't seen and get them into the diary and set the programme for the rest of the year ahead. There's quite a few agenda items already actually booked in for the next meeting, so we'll try and manage the different things that we need to review to keep the meetings to as close to 2 hours as possible. Any comments on work programme at this point? No, thank you very much. So item 16, we need to note the date of the next meeting, which is the 5th of September, 10 o'clock in here. William?
If I might, Chairman, there just seems quite a big gap between May and September. And on the basis of this agenda, I'm sure if we'd had more time, we could have debated each of these topics for considerably longer and actually gone slightly more depth. I think we should be having a meeting somewhere in the middle of that, but obviously it's your call.
It's not my call, to be honest. So I am very happy to have another meeting, but I need to be led by the Commission because there's 12 of us in total and it's your time. Could I have an indication, please, if members would like an additional meeting before September? If you could raise your hand. Okay. Well, you can all blame William because he made the point. Yeah, exactly. I think probably caused Ruth to have a heart attack just then, but we will liaise and see what can be arranged over the next couple of months. Very mindful of people's diary commitments and officers' diary commitments, but I do take your point. There are some important topics coming up that we need to have time to debate, so we will bear that in mind. There being no further business on the agenda, meeting closed. Thank you very much for your attendance.